Hello, I'm John Aberger, the Artistic Director of the Toronto Bach Festival, and this is Discover Bach. I'm here today with Julia Wedman to talk about the second movement of the Sonata in C Major for solo violin. And we're going to show you how Bach organizes this rather formidable movement into a series of bite-sized pieces that are easy to understand, and how at the same time we get a window into the working of his mind as he works on a problem. Julie, we all know that Bach wrote this set of 6 sonatas and partitas for solo violin. What was going on in his life when he was writing these?
Well, I think this was a very important, very special time in his life. He was about 35 years old. He was living in Köthen. It was his first big job as a composer. He had a young family. Everything was great. Köthen is not a huge city. If you go there now, you can the castle that he worked is still there, and it's got this beautiful kind of countryside moat around it. It's not a huge place, and he lived a few blocks away. So things were great in his life. And then he went on this trip with the prince that he was working for at the time. And when he came home, he found out that his wife, Maria Barbara, had died. And I think that this perfect magical life that he had in Köthen suddenly must have become incredibly claustrophobic.
It was shattered, huh?
Yeah, I think so. And this music was written on paper that he bought while he was on that trip with the prince. So there are some scholars that think some of the music might have been written before, but definitely we know that this music was in his mind just after the death of his wife. And we have another special clue from it on the title page of this music. There are 2 words in Italian. They say sei, S-E-I, solo. And this is a double meaning. One is 6 solos, but actually the grammar is wrong. It should be soli if it were really 6 solos.
Right.
And the correct grammar is sei, you are solo, alone. And it makes a very powerful statement about the state of mind he's in. And Bach played the violin. We know that he was a good violinist. There's reports from his son saying how well he directed the orchestra from the violin. He's more well known as an organist. And these particular pieces are incredibly difficult for the violin. So if he were to be even playing them himself, he would have been working on them really, really a lot.
You don't play these pieces without playing the violin a lot.
No, and other pieces that we know that he wrote for himself, for example, for his audition in Weimar, which was the job he had before this one, the solos that he was writing for himself are not this difficult. They're not like this.
So it's almost like he was exploring the possibilities of a single violin playing a whole world of music.
Yeah.
And so the movement we're going to look at today is what's called a fugue movement. Now, I know you and I have talked for many years about how much we admire the way Bach writes fugues. Yeah. And fugue is like this formidable word, but tell me in your own mind, what is a fugue?
Well, I like to think of a fugue as a way a composer can work out a problem. So, because a fugue is based on a very short little idea of music. So the idea that this piece is based on sounds like this.
Couldn't be simpler.
Very simple, very calm, actually. And what a composer does, and this was one of Bach's absolute favorite things in the world. And we know this wonderful story from when he would hang out with his son, C.P.E. Bach, and they would go to a concert. And if a performer was playing a fugue, when he would hear this first theme, Bach would whisper to his son all the things that you should be able to do with this fugue, all the things that
you could do with that thing.
Yes. And every time the composer or the performer would do something, Bach would nudge his son and say, look, he did it there. he did this there, he did that there.
And these guys would improvise these things, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Bach would improvise up to half an hour on one little theme. So in my mind, the fugue is we have an idea, and I think it happens to us a lot when we, or definitely happens to me, I get obsessed with certain thoughts or a certain problem, and we try to work it out in our head. And sometimes we look at it from all sorts of different angles, and we look at a little bit of it, and we turn it around in our brains, and that's what he's doing here in this fugue.
So it's a very human process of
It
working
sure
on a
is.
problem.
Yeah, it sure is. So the very beginning part of the fugue, we have about 2 minutes of music where he's working out this fugue theme. And especially in the first few bars, he puts this theme in all the different registers on the violin. So as you heard, the first time I play the theme, it's here on my D string. The second time you'll hear it on my A string. And then you hear it up in the higher register on the E string. And then you'll also hear it down in my lowest register.
Fascinating.
And you'll always know when you're listening for this fugue, you'll always know that we're in some kind of fugue working out area, because you'll hear me or whichever violinist you hear play these pieces, play lots of notes at the same time. And on the violin, we can play one note alone. We can play 2 notes. We can play 3 notes, or we can play 4 notes. And whenever you're hearing me play long sections with lots of notes at the same time, you'll know that it's me playing one of these working out sections. So you always want to be listening for, where's that tune in there? Is it a full tune? Is it a little snippet of the tune? Which register? Is it high? Is it low? Where is that tune? How am I working on this problem?
So play for us how that works in the opening bars.
Okay. So first, you hear it alone, and then he'll add an extra voice.
Wow.
It's complicated.
But he keeps going with that.
He does. He keeps going for a long time. I think it's about 65 bars.
65 bars.
Yep, with lots of different permutations.
Basically that same theme, though.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And then what does he do?
Well, like any of us who are working out a problem in our mind, as brains do, at a certain point, we can't keep focused on that problem anymore, and our mind just starts to wander. And that's exactly what happens to Bach. And in a fugue, this mind-wandering part we call an episode. So the first episode for me is the most dreamy episode. It sounds like this.
So new material.
New material, and it'll be very obvious to the listeners, because all of a sudden I'm playing an extended section of music where I only play one note at a time.
So none of these chords.
None of these chords, not 2 notes at the same time, always one note at a time, and I'm off in dreamland.
Wow. So the music really takes on a different character here. Mm-hmm. And after a while, he stops dreaming and he gets back to the task at hand.
He does. He does. And the second time, so the section I will call the fugal section 2, he already has I would say, more serious or more dramatic thoughts about it. So he starts on my E string, and it is what we call in a minor key, so it means it has a more sad quality. And what he does is right away he juxtaposes two themes at the same time. So I play a couple of notes of the theme on my E string, and then I add the theme again on my A string. So on the A string, it sounds, it's that. So together they sound like this.
It's amazing how he can do that just with a single violin.
It is incredible. Yes.
Yeah. And so then what happens?
Well, we have
He explores this new character.
Yes, he's in high angst at this point. I
Okay.
would say, yeah, it's one of the most difficult parts of the piece. And I'm playing a lot of notes at the same time, and I'm exploring this problem in different registers with different kinds of moods. And
so it's maybe like after that dreamy episode.
He's like back to business.
Back to this.
Yeah.
And he's found a different character.
He sure
in
has.
that same theme.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that then when his mind wanders again, when he goes to the next episode, he is also in this more dramatic, more angsty state. So the episode sounds like this.
And again, you're not playing chords, you're just playing single notes.
That's right. That's how we know we're in an episode.
So
I
this is
just
the
play one
next
note at
mind
a time.
wandering.
Yeah.
It's good for me to know that Bach's mind wanders too.
Yeah.
Mine certainly does.
I know.
So we've got a dramatic episode,
Yes.
and that goes on for a while, and then what happens?
Well, he does something very sneaky. At the end of this episode, he brings back the theme, and it's sort of disguised. It's on my E string. But he keeps jumping back to my D string at the same time.
So there comes the theme back.
There comes the theme back, but you almost don't notice that the theme is coming back because I'm so busy
Right.
at the same
With the
time.
dramatic episode.
Yeah, and I think that he's putting that in to kind of signal us to start paying attention because something really, really important is about to happen.
Oh, I thought the piece was going to be over now.
Oh no. The most important part is next.
Okay, what happens?
This is the fugue section. Number 3 comes in after this. So there are 3 big fugal sections. This is number 3. And this one has a very special direction from Bach. And on the top of my music, there are the words al riverso. And what happens is that the music is turned upside down. So you'll remember the first theme I played. That's our main theme. But backwards, or upside down, it sounds.
So he's turned it upside down, note for note.
Yes, he has.
So before, where it went up, it goes down. And where it went down, it goes up now.
Exactly. And by turning it upside down, I think this theme all of a sudden has a much more hopeful quality to it. And in fact, he gives us another clue that things are turning to something more hopeful or things are looking up, which is the first time I play 2 notes at the same time, the bass line is going up and up and up. It sounds like this. one of the main elements of this is things going up, things looking up. And in fact, this is not only the turning point for this piece, but this is the turning point for me for this whole collection of 6 sonatas and partitas.
So this is a pivotal movement in the whole set.
It sure is. Yeah, it's one of the biggest movements. And after this particular movement, every single piece has something to do with a positive emotion. Hope, joy, peace, love, fun.
Right.
Every single movement until the end of the book, until the end of, if you hear it in concert, until the end of your concert, will give you lots of positive, uplifting feelings.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
We only have to think of the opening of that E major partita, which comes after this sonata, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we've got this hopeful character by turning the theme upside down. So he's wrestled with this problem and he's found some hope in it.
He sure has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what happens?
Well, as we know, when we work on a problem, we get very focused on it, we try to figure things out, and then our mind wanders. And the 3rd episode also has this quality of things going up. And in fact, in this episode, the notes that I play range from one of my lowest notes to one of my highest notes. It starts like this. And then it just keeps going up.
Wow. Wow. So he starts down low and he just keeps rising.
Yeah, he does. And then the end of this episode, again, has one of those hidden themes in it. And this time it has the theme. Alternating with my very lowest string.
So he sneaks the theme in again.
He sneaks the theme in. And so it jogs our memory.
And it's not upside
Pay attention.
down. It's right side up.
It's right side up again.
Yeah.
Pay attention. And the very last thing that he does is he repeats the entire first fugue section for us. It's like he's going back to the beginning and looking at this problem again, but now he's changed.
He's had a journey.
He's had a big journey, and now things are going to be different. And actually, he does something different in the very beginning. At the very, very beginning of the piece, I was just playing the theme alone. And this time, when he does the repeat of the fugal section, I'm playing 2 notes at the same time more.
And that's how he ends the piece?
Yeah, so he continues. We have, again, this 2 minutes fugal section, and he does one more change. At the very end of the first fugal section, he ends normally. So that's a normal ending. But at the very end of the piece, he puts an extra note on top, which leaves us with this feeling of openness.
That's the final chord.
That's the final chord.
Wow. God, it's like I've spent some time in Bach's brain. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, it does feel like it playing this piece.
So interesting.
Listening to it.
I'm glad to know his mind wanders just like mine does. And I think you've really shown us how Bach takes a problem and works on it and finds different characters in it and how this movement is constructed in these very easily identified sections. Thanks so much, Julie, for joining me today and explaining this fascinating movement.
You're very welcome. I always love an opportunity to talk about my favorite subject with you, John.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.